Okay, I think we did it. Did you see that fancy countdown? That's the first time I've ever used that. It's about the peak of the production value I've got on this show. Hi, Doc. How are you doing, Dr. De Volder? How are you, sir?
Good, thank you.
Hi, everybody joining us online. Good to see you. We are live across several platforms, several people. It's a kind of a good time. What time is it now? It's going to be early evening for Western Europe, and of course late evening for South Asia, and then, gosh, what time is it in East Asia? I wonder. Time in yeah, it's already early morning for people in East Asia, so they won't be with us. But we got a pretty good cross segment of the population able to join us today, so I appreciate you taking the time. You are the great, the amazing, the inimitable, the incomparable Dr. Kris De Volder, and I have known you for the entire time I've been on this team, basically. How you doing? I mean, can you introduce yourself? What do you want to be? How do you want people to know of you?
I haven't thought about that very much, but yeah, I've been working on, I don't know, on Spring Tools or related for as long as I can remember now. Well, not quite, but since when? Since I joined VMware before it became Pivotal.
When did you join VMware?
Was that 2010 about?
Probably. Oh, wow. Yeah. So I joined August 2010. So I think you and I were.
I think I was a few months before you.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I've known you the entire 15 years.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because it's almost so coincidental, but I think it was almost exactly on my birthday that I joined.
Oh.
That's how I remember it was in May.
Oh, wow. And wow, May 2010. I remember May 2010. That's around the same time as Craig Crit Walls, I think.
I
Seems
don't
to-
know. I
Yeah,
don't know.
maybe I'm misremembering, but
Yeah, so since then I've been working. Then when I joined, I worked first on the reason I was hired was to work on Groovy Grails tool suite back in
yeah,
the day, and then later actually more because we kind of moved out of that, right? So
yeah.
became more and more focused on Spring Tool Suite after that. I've been working on that for the longest time, and more recently I'm working on some more of the commercial products for Spring. I'm I'm sort of more of a lend a hand here and there right now at the moment. So my manager Andy Clement, which I'm sure you
Oh yeah.
probably know him from Aspect J fame or AGDT back in the long time ago. But he's kind of like moving me around a bit to help out on different
Well,
teams working on the
that's because
commercial.
you're a person of many talents. The the Andy and you and Martin and there's a few of us on the spring team that are the DX side of the equation, right? As nice as a handmade, artisanally crafted Jurgen or Dr. Sire or Phil Webb API is to wield from a developer's perspective. There's a whole ecosystem of things that are adjacent to that around tooling and auto completion and compilers and syntaxes and DSLs and build tool, just all this extra stuff that makes working with that API possible in the first place. And so we have a whole, just an incredible team that just sort of focuses on all that stuff. Is that fair?
I think that's fair, yeah.
And so I think of you as like the DX Navy SEALs, or whatever. I don't know what the equivalent is. You're in Canada, right? Like that's
Yeah, I have always been a tool person. Like I always, even before I joined VMware, when I was used to be a professor at University of British Columbia.
yeah.
The things I was working on were Eclipse plugins too. So with some grants from Eclipse Foundation.
Oh, that's so
So
cool.
I've been into tools ever from as long as I remember, my
Uh,
entire career. So
and you're a doctor, a PhD. One of my favorite doctors, along with doctors Who, Seuss, Strange, Sire.
yeah, I don't think of myself as that,
Oh well.
but
Uh,
you
well, I
can
think
say that if you want. But
well,
normally people don't call me doctor; they just say
I know.
Chris.
I do. I'm a big fan. And you're also a professor. I forgot about Professor Emeritus, I guess, or are you
Well,
still?
that's a long time ago. So yeah,
Yeah.
it wasn't really my kind of work, I think.
Well, that's a shame. I think any student would have been lucky to learn from you. So you were working on tools and the Eclipse. How'd you get into the Eclipse stuff? That's always like, because we have so many brilliant people that came from this incredible, ecosystem, this incredibly beautiful sort of vibrant ecosystem around Eclipse. What was
Yeah,
your?
well, I think Eclipse back in the day, that's a long time ago, but Eclipse was groundbreaking in a way.
Yeah,
They raised the bar on what it means to be an IDE, and they gave it for free, and
yeah,
everybody had to follow suit. I don't think we would have like now everybody likes IntelliJ, but
yeah.
I would suggest that IntelliJ wouldn't exist if Eclipse wasn't there to push things higher. We wouldn't have the kind of tools we have today if Eclipse didn't sort of set the standard.
I think that's
Now
fair.
everybody likes to kind of complain about Eclipse, right? It's almost like a hobby for people to complain how bad Eclipse is. But
I would say what you just said is true, and also that by they how Android forced, like, you remember you can use open source as a weapon, right? Like you can use it as a cudgel. So Google released Android, right? And what is the point of Android? It was just to make sure that iPhone doesn't have exclusive run of the category, right? And so they commoditized the operating system, which meant that went down to zero, so you couldn't charge for it, right? And that created gravity for iPhone to move towards a certain way. Same thing, I imagine. I don't know. It feels like by pushing this incredibly good, competent, usable, really sophisticated, with a lot of people working on it, IDE and making it open source, you force IntelliJ can concede that there is ground to be.
Well,
to
I
be
don't. I'm
open
not
source
too
support.
familiar with how IntelliJ got started. Like,
Well, it was it came out in, I don't know, 2000, something like that, and it was a very good IDE, but the problem is it was paid, right? And so they actually had to create two editions,
but
open.
Eclipse has been around longer than IntelliJ, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, lots of things have been around longer than IntelliJ, but the thing is, IntelliJ wasn't open source, right? They had to make it open source.
Partially, yeah.
Well, yeah, they have a core foundation.
Yeah.
Although even that, I think they just pulled those things back together.
But I don't know what in the time when Eclipse came out on the scene.
Yeah.
Well, what wasn't there? There wasn't a lot of alternatives, really. It's
No.
what the thing I remember what I was using when I was just programming in my undergraduate years and my graduate studies, and it was Emacs. You know,
Yeah.
that was the tool back then, Emacs.
Right.
Doing
No,
Java development. So when I got my hands on Eclipse, it's like a world of difference and available.
So okay, I just asked the old AI, and I don't know how reliable that is. So IntelliJ was first released in January 2001, and then Eclipse was released in November 7th, 2001. So actually,
close together, I guess.
Yeah, and I wonder if, and I'm sure the Eclipse stuff was more in the open. You know, whatever. It doesn't matter. The point is, I agree. There's a huge debt of gratitude owed to the Eclipse projects, and heck, I'm still sad. I'm still sad that the forget about the IDEs and all that stuff. I'm still sad that the rich client windowing toolkit for building UIs. You know, the what was it called? Eclipse RCP.
Yeah.
That was cool. I mean, just compared to using Swing, that felt like a really usable platform at the time. You know.
Well, it's kind of like a typical Eclipse thing, which is they always seem to be a little bit more ambitious than they can do. So I didn't find programming with this SWT too pleasant of an experience. SWT is the toolkit, the widgets, and the RCP is what you're talking about. Is more of the application framework, how to build an application with it. But SWT is just like the widgets, like the buttons and the sliders, and it's the replacement for Swing. And it's like typical Eclipse, like they think they can do it better, and in some ways they can. Like they built something which has native look and feel, right?
Right.
But the APIs were all sort of like half finished in my experience. Like so it's very hard to program against an API that's only half working.
Well, I remember when it first came out, the SWT stuff looked better, and that was important. You remember when there was a really big rush?
It looked better. But it wasn't a pleasant thing to work with.
Well, and I know that because I remember you still had to like dispose of the memory for these peers, these native peers, right? In SWT. So I remember there's that weirdness, like you're still doing reference counting or something, even though you're using Java. It felt a little, maybe I'm thinking of something else, but I think that's true.
I think that's true. Yeah, but that's not the biggest complaint I would have.
Really?
The thing that I found, like when I was working on Eclipse plugins, right, on STS, and you make a wizard and you put everything on there, and you spend days debugging the fact that some widgets don't draw on the screen or the layout is not working properly, and that's the kind of experience you would have with this SWT, because it's just not, the implementation wasn't so great, I would say. So it's not, if you use Swing, you would throw something like that together in half an hour and it'll just work. You put the button there and then the button is there. In SWT, you put the button there and the button isn't there. It's like not drawing on the screen for some reason, and then you spend half a day debugging the reason why your button isn't drawing.
Oh, cross-platform incompatibilities and minutia. Oh, well. Anyway,
I still think that Eclipse overall, we have to credit Eclipse for the fact that we have good IDEs today. I think that's still the truth, even though everybody now likes to kind of complain about it. So
well, I mean, you and Martin and the team, a strategic stroke of one of millions of strokes of brilliance is you made the Spring Tooling language service LSPs, right? So
Yeah,
some
you gotta credit Martin for that. He was the one who pushed for that. So
well, I think that whole team, that whole idea that so people who are using Visual Studio Code, which is arguably the 800-pound gorilla in the tooling space these days, uh, they're benefiting from those decades of work, the decades of work that preceded it in Eclipse. That all that's all that all redounds to the benefit of people using Visual Studio Code today with Spring and with Java. And that's a really nice experience because it has such good Java tooling from the Spring support that we built over the years.
yeah, that's what many people maybe don't realize is that they're actually running Eclipse when they're using the Java
Yeah,
tooling.
it's
Because
really good.
under VS Code, you basically are running Eclipse JDT. So
Here's the question, actually. Do you guys like Visual Studio Code for work with Java? Yeah, I think it works. Yeah, why not? We have
if I'd have to use Java, I think I'd still prefer Eclipse or IntelliJ
okay.
because yeah, and probably I mean I have to be honest. I would right now. I was a long time. I didn't like to use IntelliJ, but it was more of a case of not being familiar with it, and
Sure.
now that I'm using it all the time when I'm working on many Java things that are not Eclipse projects. Like
Right.
if you're gonna build an Eclipse plugin, you pretty much have no choice. You got to use Eclipse
Sure.
because otherwise it's not going to work for you anyway. But now that I'm not working on Eclipse plugins as much, I'm using mostly when I'm using developing Java, I would use IntelliJ.
Okay. Interesting.
So
Yeah.
I'd use IntelliJ, and if I'm working on Eclipse plugin, I'll use Eclipse because it's the only thing that actually knows how to work with Eclipse plugin code with all the XML files and all that stuff. So, but that's it. And VS Code, I don't because I know what you're using is Eclipse. I'd rather use Eclipse directly because it's easier
Right.
in a way. Because if you're trying to figure out why something doesn't work in VS Code Java tooling, I think so. You probably have to kind of reverse engineer in your head a little bit what would happen in JDT, and then you understand why it's not working. So it's easier than to use Eclipse directly, in my opinion, because
Well,
then
is it fair to say that's because you understand how the sausage is made and you just prefer to be closer to the sausage? Whereas I think most people, if you're using Visual Studio Code, the experience is going to be great for you.
it's not bad. I think it's usable, but I would. There's some things still a little bit. I'm not sure if that's still accurate, but I don't think. Do they have a type hierarchy view now in VS Code? That would be one of the things that was missing for the longest time. I don't know if they added it recently, but
I don't know. But I know we have a lot of people that are using it, and I'm glad they are because there's people that aren't using Eclipse or IntelliJ at all. So for them to be able to come and use Java and still get access to this great tooling via Visual Studio Code.
If you're like more of a polyglot developer, right? If you're because of your work, you may be asked to work with many different things. Like one day you're doing some Go code, and the next day you're writing some Python, and the next day you're doing some JavaScript and some React, and then maybe some Spring code thrown in for a good measure. I think that's a good case for you to be using VS Code because you can use it for all of those things, and it will do a decent job at it. But if you're a pure Java developer, I don't think you'd be using VS Code.
Maybe the other thing you just struck upon a minute ago, and I wanted to speak to, you're an Emacs human, right? And I have been an Emacs person most of my life, but since like February of this year, I've embarked upon a spiritual journey to learn Vim motions, and so I'm trying to learn Vim because all the cool kids, or at least all the cool kids, insist they insist it's the best. So the Vim motions are pretty compelling. I haven't gotten to the point where I feel like I know what I'm doing, and I'm actually a lot slower still than I was without them. But well, no, that's not true. Maybe I'm for the 80% case, I'm kind of where I should be, but when I leave that comfort zone, then I'm very slow, And yeah, that Vim motion stuff is, I don't know. Have you ever used
I don't.
VI, Vim, or
No, I try not to. Every time some Unix tool makes me use VI or Vim or whatever, I just have to figure out which environment variable changes it to Emacs.
editor? Right, exactly.
Because I just don't want to learn all the keys.
No, exactly.
Things, you know.
And what got me was that VI came out, like, there's new releases all the time, right? Whereas Emacs came out once a decade or whatever it was, like, for the longest.
Yeah,
I'm
but
sorry,
Emacs is another one of those things like Eclipse, I guess,
Oh,
that was ahead of its time. Like
yeah.
that's kind of an amazing tool if you think about it, and the fact that it still exists today is kind of testament to that.
Right. I meant the other way around. VI came out once a decade. Emacs was always being updated, and there's new stuff. But now there's this NeoVim. Have you seen that? The NeoVim thing?
No.
It is a full integrated sort of ID. It's a very, very souped up text editor. It's like Visual Studio Code for Vim. And you as a result, you can run LSPs in there just naturally, so you can use the Spring support inside of NeoVim. And it's actually quite, it feels really, really fast, which is nice. It's not, but just like Visual Studio Code isn't a full IDE in the same way that IntelliJ or Eclipse would feel like, or Visual Studio proper would feel like.
Yep.
It's still very, very compelling. So we live in an amazing time, and that's due in large part to the work you and Martin and the rest are all doing on the tools. So that's what you started with. What are you doing these days?
Now, the last things I've worked on is I'm so like right now, this very moment in the last couple of weeks and months, I'm writing open rewrite recipes for App Advisor.
So what is open rewrite?
So open rewrite is this open sourcey kind of a tool that it's a bit hacky, I guess, under the hood. It uses the Java compiler,
right?
The Oracle compiler, to get ASTs from your code, and then the open rewrite recipes can transform those things and
wow,
and do some automatic refactoring or cleanup of your code. So the purpose for these recipes is to assist people with migrating their old Spring code to newer Spring code, modernizing their apps, upgrading. So the last bunch of recipes I was working on all related to Spring security for upgrading from 5 to 6. So we're still a bit behind. But yeah, so I guess the commercial clients oftentimes are a bit behind.
Yeah.
Some of them are still on even older versions than Spring 5. Some of them, I think.
Yeah, we don't like that. I mean, please upgrade. So Open Rewrite is this open source project. Originally, I think it was originally started by Netflix, and it became this thing that people can use to refactor Java source code and other source codes. I don't know.
Yeah, the guy behind it is one of our former colleagues.
Yeah, Jonathan Schneider, right? He's a
Yeah, he was he worked at Pivotal, right?
Yeah, on Micrometer, one of the greatest projects ever. So brilliant guy, and that code is really good. So we have recipes. You're saying that support what?
Well, they try to find they try to find deprecated APIs, and most of the recipes I wrote were based on the release notes from Spring 5, where they usually have a whole document describing all the things that got deprecated and removed when you're going to migrate to Spring 6. These are a bunch of things you're supposed to do, and we try to, as best as we can, we read those release notes, and then we try to turn them into automatic recipes.
Cool.
Right.
Cool. And I suppose you'll be working on the Spring framework, so Spring Security 7 migrations.
So the last week I spent looking at Spring integration, which is the migration recipes for that. But I don't think we're actually going to end up writing a lot of recipes for Spring integration. There were about 10, maybe a dozen or so.
Yeah.
Potential tickets that I looked at and investigated all of them to see what they were about. And but I don't think any of. I mean, there are some that could be automated, but depending on, like, it's a bit depends on, we have to balance a bit. Because one of the things we had to consider was the specific customers, what they're using, and whether
Yeah.
that recipe would be useful to them, because this is a commercial product after all. So we're trying to customize that to the people who pay us a bit
Right.
more. So
One,
so there are not going to be any Spring integration recipes coming out of this. I think I just kind of documented most of the findings and just moved on. But the next thing I'll be looking at is recipes to update to Spring Boot 4 and
yes.
Spring 7. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So
And that includes Spring Security 7, which is going to be.
yeah, it is not yet on the radar screen, but I'm sure that's going to come now. But whether I'll still be on the Steam, then I don't know, because like I said, I'm a bit of a more of a, they move me around a lot now.
Right.
So I work on this and then I work on that, and then and I like it in a way. It's nice to kind of change of scenery once in a while.
Right.
Get away from Eclipse APIs is not a bad thing.
Sure. Is there a recipe? Do you know that? I don't know. Is there a recipe for, right, in the older versions of Spring integration, if you created a object of type channel, message channel, that was okay. And then the more recent thing is now you're supposed to return the step before. You're supposed to return the spec object. So message channel spec.
I didn't run into that
Okay.
particular pattern.
I wonder if there's already support for that. Anyway, it's kind of a weird. Like all these channel definitions should be migrated to the spec definition. Instead.
Yeah, that sounds like something you would target with a recipe, but
yeah. Oh well. So let's see now. You're doing.
But I think in terms of tooling, what's the most interesting things that's going to happen or is happening right now is how this AI stuff is going to mix in with everything.
Yeah. Well, that's true. I mean, wait, before we move on to that, what is you said you're working on Accelerator and
App Advisor are the two most recent projects I've been sort of helping out on. So Accelerator is sort of like the idea is that you're as a enterprise, you would have specific patterns that you want your developers to use. It's kind of like start.spring.io, right? This is open source and all out in the public, and it gives you the correct POM files or the correct build.gradle files or Kotlin scripts for scaffolding all your dependencies. And an Accelerator is kind of in the same space, but it's meant for your own. You make your own sort of templating projects for your developers in-house, and they would make your best practices there.
So does this mean I can standardize within my organization, like particular code snippets and setups for projects, so that when
and it's like it's a tool for people to build these kind of sample projects. So the idea would be you start with a sample project, but then you also have some transformation rules that you can use to customize it, and some DSL that you can describe like a bunch of parameters that you might want to fill in, or options that you might want to select. Like, yes, I want the Cloud Foundry support. Yes, okay. Or yes, I want some security feature. Yes. And then you could select those things and more parameters would appear. So it's like a little it's a YAML file that describes these parameters and the dependencies. And then there is a kind of a script that goes with it that would take those inputs and customize your project with it.
Okay, so you can enrich
so it's kind of like a sample project, except you have some tools to customize the sample based on some parameters.
That is so cool. That kind of consistency is key for growth in an organization. So I like that kind of stuff. So that's Accelerator, and then what's the Advisor?
An App Advisor is the tool with the open rewrite recipes in it. So App Advisor is a command line tool the origins of that was, it used to be called Spring Boot Migrator in its previous incarnation, if you've heard of this one. So this is like, it's basically that, but then it's evolved a little bit. So there is a CLI. You would give it access to your source code of your project, right? And then you run this CLI, and it will analyze your dependencies and give you some kind of migration plan that says, okay, we should upgrade all these dependencies from these versions to this version. It's trying to get from, say, Spring 5 to 6. I would give you a plan to say, first we'll migrate, and I'll try to do it step by step. And what the biggest thing I think that it does is it understands it has a bunch of metadata about all your dependencies, so it understands which libraries are supposed to be compatible with which version of Java is needed for this version of Spring versus that version. So it'll give you a plan that says, okay, the first thing you should do is upgrade your Java version to 21 or something, right?
Nice.
And then the next thing we'll do is we'll upgrade these Spring Core libraries, and then we'll upgrade the Spring Security ones, and so forth and so forth. And then it'll try to do most of that for you, changing all your POM files. But then also at every incremental step of migration, we have a catalog of open rewrite recipes that try to go even further than just updating your dependencies. I'll also try to find certain deprecated code patterns and transform those automatically as well. As best as it can do, right? Because you if you're a realist, you should realize that none of those things necessarily work perfectly, but they try to do the best they can, and they may, in some cases, instead of actually fixing something because it's too hard or it's too complicated to do that with an automatic recipe, may leave some comments in the code that says, oh, there is something going on here that you should look at. Then it's up to the developer to take care of those.
I see. Well, that's still, if you can, what is it, the 80%, right? I just want most of the code to be in the right place, and then I can sift through it by hand.
Yeah. No, I'm so from what I've seen so far, playing with it and sort of experimenting a bit, is that Spring is actually this good in a way that many of the times you just don't have to do anything, because if you did something wacky and you made some custom whatever subclass of some thing because you did something special, and I don't know, maybe we don't have access to all the commercial people's code, but if I write my own sample code from scratch and I just follow the patterns that are documented in the Spring guides and the Spring documentation, and I follow those patterns, then I write my application, and I, more often than not, it just migrates without any pain. There isn't much to be done. Like the Spring team takes good care of when they make breaking changes to minimize the impact most of the time. And if you follow the pattern that they said, then you probably won't be affected by the change.
All the time we forecast breaking changes for releases, and we really try, but that's not to say it won't happen, that something will change incompatibly. But so these two projects are how do people get access to these two products?
I'm not a salesman, so I don't know. I think you buy them from Broadcom.
I know a lot of our users.
It's part of the. I think it's part of the Tanzu portfolio, so you'd be a Tanzu customer, I guess.
We have so many of our users are also Tanzu customers, and obviously this stuff is like, it's huge. It's because they're large organizations, so these accelerometers, they're force multipliers. That's a word. I'm looking for something to suggest that they give you scale beyond one person's means. And that's awesome. I love that capability. So these kinds of tools are like, I think, I think you would be very silly at a large enough scale to ignore these tools. And I think a lot of organizations would be wise to either hire and skill up people like yourself who can think at this level, or better, just to let us do it for them. just like I think all organizations at a certain size need to have dedicated security people. I just think there's a lot of developer experience stuff, like people with the skills of people like yourself that are required. Speaking of a force multiplier, you mentioned it earlier, and it's a good point. What about AI? Are you using AI like for your coding and for what you're doing?
Yeah, I use it a lot nowadays. It's
Oh,
but so I was kind of late maybe to the party. I don't know how to, but because Broadcom, our employer, right? Broadcom was very skittish. I think for good reason. Like they're a little bit like, yeah, we don't know the impact of this, the security of this, and there are some real concerns. I would say that
yeah,
you have to be, you can't just like jump in as a enterprise and just let people do whatever they want with it, because there are some security risks. Actually, that's one of the biggest misgivings I'd say about the AI is the security. But yeah, I could go talk about that a little bit if you want. But
yeah.
but what I'm doing right now is like because Broadcom just a couple of months ago finally made the decision to kind of like let people try it, and they wanted to see how it works. So we all got access to use Cursor as
Nice.
as a kind of IDE. Oh, well, not all. I mean, you had to sign up, and somehow I got on the early batch of first people to try it. So and
Yeah.
uh, I really like it. To be honest, some people react to it differently, but I think to me it's like really a force multiplier. I'd say some people are maybe a bit more skeptical, and it's a balancing act between you have to read all the code it produces and try to understand it and make sure it's correct, because it produces some garbage, but
Oh yeah.
but it's much faster to me than to get the AI to produce a bunch of code and then validate that it's correct
Right.
than to write it myself. It's in that sense it's kind of like the way an IDE code complete, right,
Right.
works. If once you've used an IDE that has code completes, you will not go back to using an editor, a text editor, right? You just
Right.
won't do that, right? So I think is the same, like the transition from an just using a regular IDE to an augmented IDE where you can just tell in a chat window, please write me a function that does this, blah, and it's just
Right.
gonna do it for you. And then you just have to look at it because sometimes it's not correct. But okay, so what? Right? Still faster than me doing it, and it's not the end of the line if it produces something that doesn't work or that doesn't
All back.
fit with what you want. you
Yeah.
can you can do a code review and tell it, I don't like the way this looks, or I don't think this loop should be like that, or whatever, and it will say, oh yeah, you're absolutely right, because they always agree with you. And
Right.
then I'll fix it, right? So but that's and it ties in with some of the things we talked about earlier too, because one of the ideas we have with this app advisor recipes, because the recipes are somewhat limited in what they can do. Like they look for patterns, but the
Right.
patterns, if the patterns aren't exactly there, or the data flow is a bit too complicated and it's too hard to analyze, then the recipe won't know what to do. But if you tell an AI to fix it, it might know what to do. So
Right.
what we try to kind of play a little bit with the hybrid model, where you try to get open rewrite recipes to find the places that are interesting
Right.
and try to fix them as best as they can. But if the recipe sort of detects, well, this looks too complicated for an automatic refactor, it puts a comment in that's kind of like a pointer to a longer document, a markdown document that's kind of specifically written to help an AI refactor your code.
Uh, this is
But
awesome.
to me is
Tool.
we've been calling these things AI to do comments internally, right?
Right.
But they're not AI comments. They're just regular comments. They're comments that point to a document. You could go read the document yourself It's
Right.
meant to be readable by a smart developer and give them instructions, kind of like Spring release notes would be,
Yeah.
right? They would say, oh, you see this deprecated method, you could replace it with these things. And this is kind of what you should look at, and this is what you should think about. And it's written in that kind of a style. Now, and then you could either do that yourself, or if you have one of those AI enabled IDEs, you could just tell the AI to read the file and do it, basically. So
That's
that's
awesome. That is so cool. That kind of stuff. That I same thing for writing, right? I write a lot of human text. And by the way, it's funny you had to say that the comments were written for. They're just regular comment. I'm. You said AI comments, and I'm imagining like 0001110. You know, like. But anyway, no. I read a lot of text, and the worst thing with writing text or code is the blank canvas, right? It's just very hard to
yeah.
get into it, right? And so I'd much rather have a straw man solution, you
Yeah.
know.
The
Even
AIs are very good at scaffolding a lot of code. Like the initializer use case, like Spring Initializer.
yeah,
You can get pretty much the same or better results just by typing into the chat, I want a Spring Boot project that demonstrates for me some Spring security stuff, and it'll create for you from scratch basically an entire scaffold with some example code and everything working Spring security in it.
right, nice. That's
So, and it does that basically. It starts scaffolding your POM file and then put some main classes and put some config files, and it does all that. And then, yeah, no, but you have to be a little careful because I've done that. And sometimes there are, if you don't look at it, that's the deceptive part of these AIs, right? If you just look at it superficially, it always looks very good. It looks impressive. You'd say, "Oh,
sure.
wow, amazing!" But then you start running the code, and it starts kind of falling apart, or you're running the test and they break, and you look around the code and you see some questionable stuff here and there.
Right.
But you know,
Oh yeah, force multipliers all the way around. What is the I don't know. I mean, what are you working on? Can you tell us without don't tell us anything you can't. But is there anything you're looking forward to that we should be aware of? Or if not, you can just say nothing since it's all deeply strategic.
oh no,
Yeah,
and nothing that strategic. Like for my own personal
whatever you want, or just
Uh, I
whatever
mean,
you.
not in terms of like the products or anything, but like
Yeah,
the general feel to me is that this AI thing is the biggest thing that's happened in a long time, and there is controversy around it, but to me it's a real thing. Like, I mean, to me this is like the same transition. It's like the same kind of thing that happened when we got Google search type things.
yeah,
Can you imagine if you go back to the times before you had internet and Google search, how you worked, right? Can you go
right,
back to that? No, you can't, right? That's to me, these AI things, that's the same kind of thing happening right now. Like, people are adopting this and they will not go back. Like, it's gonna be part of everybody's day-to-day workflow. Is there's gonna be some AI tools. How exactly that's gonna work out, I don't know. But for software developers, I think our workflow is one of the first to be really majorly affected by this.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think nobody would. Okay, it's been how many years has it been since AI was going to take all of our jobs in 6 months, right? It's been like 2 or 3 years now, but I don't think that's ever going to happen. I do think, however, that we all have done pair programming before, and if you don't find that experience particularly enriching, then maybe you won't find AI particularly enriching. But I find it very enriching. I find it very
Yeah,
useful
but
and productive.
that's the way I work with those AIs. It's
Yeah,
like a pair programming buddy.
yeah, and it's really
Yeah,
quite
but
good.
the thing is, it's not as good as a human pair program. In some ways, it's much better, and in some ways, it's much worse. Like, think of it as a human pair programming buddy who knows everything on the internet.
Right.
But at the same time, it learns nothing new. Like you can tell it 100 times that it did something wrong, and it will just not remember the next time.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's true of me too, though. So but no, but it's okay. Here's my dichotomy, right? I think that by what you just said, right? It's trained on the internet, and the internet, by definition, it's not the best code, it's not the worst. It is the 80%, right? It's what most people write, which is not necessarily the newest or the best code. So you're not going to get the. I would say that I, Josh, at this point, after decades in the field, probably write better Spring code than the AI models. But I don't write better CSS, than the
Right.
AI.
Yeah.
I'm below the 50th percentile. I'm below the mean.
Yeah.
Whereas,
That's one thing that I find is like it can make you a much more versatile developer. Like
yeah,
I don't have to learn Go to be program in Go now.
right. And
So
so
another thing that I like about using it is actually using it as a tutor, sort of
yes,
like when you're doing something that you're not familiar with, you can either there's two ways to try and use this, right? Like one way is to complete hands off, like what they call this vibe coding. I don't really believe in that. I
right.
think it's wrong in all the ways that the people criticize it. Like it produces basically unmaintainable code that's going to bite you
Right.
in a few years. But what you can do is you can ask the questions of it. Like you can get it to write some code for you, but then you don't just accept it at face value. You have to puzzle through it, and you can use the AI to explain the code to you as well. Like you
Right.
ask it questions, and you ask it, why do you do this way? Why do you do that way? And then you use your many years experience as a software developer to kind of figure out that what it wrote is maybe not the best code. And you don't you learn from the AI. Like the AI knows the syntax perfectly,
Right.
but it doesn't necessarily understand the best way to write good code.
Well, that's the point. It's going to be trained on the commons, right? So what
Yeah.
yeah, to what you're saying, and what I was trying to say is it raises me up in my CSS and in my TypeScript, but it brings me down in my Java. And so I am, insofar as I am an expert or not, well, whatever, I'm better than the AIs at this point. It doesn't really help people like me on that. And just as I'm sure it can't teach you much about the Eclipse APIs, but on the other hand, it gives you these superpowers in these other ecosystems where we're not experts, and that's valuable. Makes us more fully formed, rounded developers. That's really exciting. You're doing some of the cool stuff. I think the hybrid between the tools and the integration with these AIs, and it's gonna be so cool. I don't know. Are you on the? I guess we should, wind down here. But I'm not even sure what the. Are you on the internet? Do you want to be found? And if so, where do people find you? I guess is the real question.
No, I'm more of a lurker, so I don't have. For the longest time I didn't even have a cell phone, so I got
Okay.
one now.
Yeah. Oh.
I got a cell phone finally.
Oh.
So yeah, but yeah, I don't go Facebook. I don't do anything really.
That's because you're smart guy. Okay, well, I mean, I'm sure you can be found on the. Are you on the GitHub? The hub of
Yeah,
Gits.
I'm on GitHub, I guess. Yeah, but I'm not, since I'm working more on the commercial products now. They're actually not on the public GitHub. Most of the
Sure.
things I work on. So
Well, I don't know. Okay. Well,
yeah.
in that case,
So, yeah.
it makes your time here even more exclusive and valuable. See that, people? You're getting a conversation with somebody that.
I'm sure at some point I'll transition back to working on Spring Tool Suite and be more on the open source stuff again. At least I hope so. Yeah.
I mean, all the stuff you do is really just. It's way above my. I don't understand half of it. I just know it's magic and it works and it's awesome, and I appreciate you. Thanks, Dr. De Volder, for your time today. Appreciate it. Thanks everybody for hanging out today. I hope you got something out of it and got to get the insight from somebody who's been making your experience as a developer using Spring better for years and years. So thank you. Have a good day. Bye.